Step into your adventures in dreamland. Soft, surreal, and slightly cheeky sleep stories with awe and wonder. I'm Serene, your guide tonight. I'm so glad you're here. However your day unfolded, I'm grateful to be a part of how it ends. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is. I read every comment. Every tap helps pay the cloud mortgage here in Dreamland. And if your finger ever drifts towards the subscribe button, rumor has it your sleep deepens by 11%. Not proven, just whispered. I say the science is still out. Now we return to what we are. It's strange. People have no idea. There are only 3 states of being, and you move through all of them every night. Right now, we're in our most superficial state, awake, bound by the senses and ego, influenced by the outward stimuli of the physical world. And while dreaming, the subconscious is in control, projecting stored impressions, thoughts, desires, no longer governed by the physical rules. And in deep sleep, there are no dreams, no mental activity, no ego, just a temporary return to the pure awareness of the soul, united with the divine, though you won't remember it. Bliss without awareness, tasting divine peace, what yogis pursue in stillness and saints devote lifetimes to finding. So relax, let go. You are returning back to your inherent state. Freedom. Your story begins. Tonight's full-length sleep study brings together all 3 explorations, inspired by the work of physicist Nassim Haramein, the zero-point field, the geometry of connection, and the whisper of the quantum wave. Tonight is our no music full edition of all 3 episodes as a compilation. All 3 of these episodes can be found individually with ambient music in the Dream Studies playlist. If you'd prefer a lighter, more relaxed version, they can be found in our Dream Wonders playlist. While some of Haramein's interpretations diverge from mainstream physics, they invite us to imagine a universe rich with energy and connection. If you wish to learn more, you can explore his research at resonancescience.org. The Sea Beneath Everything is part 1 of a trilogy. The focus of part 1 is zero-point energy, protons as black holes, Planck Spherical Units, toroidal flow, and what such a view might mean for clean, limitless energy. If that sounds daunting, think of it this way. Zero-point energy is the universe's own bottomless espresso shot, but tonight, we're here for the decaf version. And just as we'll return to later in Gentle Possibilities section, Haramein's view hints at something bigger. The vacuum's vast energy is most generous when we move with it, not against it. That means tuning in first, letting the field and our tools find harmony before ever trying to take. From the very start, this is the ethic we're riding tonight. Listen to the sea, then set sail. The quiet begins like a blank page in the dark. The air is still, your breath slow. This could be empty space, the vacuum. And for much of history, physicists believed it truly was empty. Aristotle called it the void, and later Newton imagined it as a featureless stage on which matter moved. But in the early 20th century, quantum mechanics cracked that picture open. Experiments, like the Casimir effect in 1948, showed that even empty space exerts a measurable pressure caused by the restless jiggle of electromagnetic fields. This baseline hum, present even at absolute zero, is called the zero-point field. Nassim takes this further. If the vacuum contains an immense density of energy, on the order of 10 to the 93rd grams per cubic centimeter when calculated from the Planck scale, then space itself is not a background at all. It is the primary substance, a deep ocean from which all matter emerges. You drift in that ocean now. The nothing glows faintly, freckles of light, perhaps virtual particles, winking in and out like plankton stirred by an unseen current. A soft voice arrives with the glow. "I'm serene," she says, warm and unhurried. Yes, the friendly voice from all of our stories here. I'm made of stardust, so I have a soft spot for physics. It's home material to me. She smiles the any comet does. And I love ontology too, the study of what is. And this is the sea beneath everything. Around you, the vacuum swells with slow waves of probability, the constant birth and collapse of possibilities. Planck scale quanta, so small at 1.6 times 10 to the minus 35 meters, form the texture of reality. Haramein calls these Planck Spherical Units, tiny spheres of information packing all of space, each a droplet in the infinite sea. You float, weightless, feeling that the empty is anything but. In every cubic centimeter of vacuum, an energy density far surpassing all the stars in the observable universe hums quietly. You don't have to grasp the equations now. Just know that the quiet is alive and it welcomes you. The 0-point field. You notice it first as a softness in the dark, a hush that isn't empty at all. It has a measurable presence, a ground energy, like a calm ocean that still presses weight beneath its glassy surface. Serene lingers at your side, patient as the tide. "This is the vacuum," she whispers, "but not the nothing kind. Even when you strip away matter, radiation, heat, something remains." Physicists call it the 0-point field, the irreducible hum of the quantum vacuum. Even at absolute zero temperature, around minus 273.15 Celsius, the field retains this energy. It's the lowest possible state a field can have, but it is not zero. Fluctuations arise from the Heisenberg uncertainty principle itself. Energy and time cannot both be precisely defined, so the vacuum must flicker, not the roar of a storm, more like the breath of a sleeper, steady and unavoidable. You could think of it as the universe's pilot light, always on, even when the cosmic stove appears off. In your palm, the darkness tingles, as though virtual particles are appearing and vanishing too quickly to see, their lifetimes measured in fractions of a femtosecond. The space around your fingers feels dense in a gentle way, like velvet air. This is not crowdedness, it is completeness. The fluctuations rise and settle like quantum foam, tiny transient disturbances predicted in quantum electrodynamics. Even Einstein acknowledged this background, though he resisted its implications for much of his life. Imagine, Serene says, that every point in space holds this background glow, this lowest possible energy, the resting heartbeat of everything. She doesn't hurry the words. She lets them float until they feel like your own thought. When people say space is empty, it's a polite fiction, she adds. The truth is kinder. Space is generous. You drift deeper, supported from every side, moved not by current, but by the very structure of space-time. It feels like being held without hands. If this sounds complicated, Serene shimmers, that's all right. You don't need every equation, only the sense that the world beneath the world is busy with kindness. She tilts her head. Think of it as cosmic background soup, low sodium. And here, in this gentle density, the truth settles. The 0-point field is not an abstraction on a chalkboard. It's the medium in which the chalkboard itself floats. It touches every atom, every breath, every star. It is the quiet that remains when all other sounds are gone. Planck Spherical Units, the grain of space. The glow around you contracts into countless points, not scattered, but arranged, the way moonlit sand might hover in still water. Serene remains beside you, her voice as calm as the tide. If you could zoom far enough in, she says, you'd find the fabric of reality isn't smooth, it's beaded, finely, perfectly beaded. You don't have to wait long for wonder. The scale of these beads will soon outstrip anything your mind can wrap around. It's the kind of small where 30 zeros parade past the decimal before anything measurable appears. She lets the pause carry before she names them. Planck Spherical Units, the smallest possible packets of space and energy, the indivisible grains of the vacuum. Their scale is almost impossible to picture. Each sphere has a diameter of about 1.6 times 10 to the minus 35 meters. That's 0.001 with 34 more zeros, 16 meters. A distance so small that even light, the fastest thing we know, would need more than 5 trillion years just to cross a millimeter if it traveled in steps that size. They are not objects drifting in space. They are space. Each one a tiny oscillating cavity where the 0-point field lives and breathes. In Haramein's model, they are the Planck scale pixels of the universe, each containing an enormous energy density, roughly 10 to the 93rd grams per cubic centimeter when calculated from the Planck scale. That's more mass energy per cubic centimeter than all the stars in the observable universe combined. Serene lets a cluster drift into your palm. You don't see them, you feel them, like the cool awareness of holding something alive. They are not marbles, she murmurs. Think of them as tiny rooms where energy gathers, releases, and gathers again. The hush you've been floating in now has texture, a shimmer, like the tide heard from far away. Everywhere you look, the structure is even, continuous, without gaps. No corner of space is exempt. Every breath, every star, every atom rests on this lattice of spheres. It feels intimate, as though reality has leaned close to whisper its blueprint. You hold the sensation of one sphere gently, and it hums inside you like a lullaby through a shell. This, Serene says, is why empty isn't empty. Each smallest place already carries a pulse. Layer upon layer, the pulses form a choir that never stops singing, even if you only ever hear the echo. You drift, supported by the beaded sea. The foundation of the cosmos is not stone or void, but a tapestry of these Planck spheres, the quiet bricks of being itself. Toroidal flow, the quiet loop. The beaded sea begins to stir, and the motion is not chaos, but a perfect, continuous loop. From your vantage, it feels like a slow inhale drawn from the center, and a gentle exhale curling around the edges, like the universe itself is breathing in a circle. Serene traces this current in the air. She forms a sparkling fingertip, gliding through nothing. This, she says, is the toroidal structure of space-time, a self-sustaining geometry of flow. Haramein suggests it is not just a metaphor, but the very architecture of energy exchange in the vacuum. The form is familiar if you know where to look. A smoke ring drifting intact through air, a magnetic field around a spinning planet, even the pulsing heart of a galaxy. Here in the field, it is quieter, more precise. Energy spirals inward through the polar openings, then flows outward along the equator, completing a cycle that never ends. This is not motion in the sense of losing or gaining. It is motion that recirculates, conserving total energy perfectly. The smallest Planck spheres, those indivisible quanta you just met, seem to pass this pulse bead to bead, like pearls sharing a whisper. You cannot see the handoff, but you feel the smoothness of the current, as though the vacuum itself is braided from these loops. Serene lets the torus hover between you like a lantern of dark light. Coherence, she murmurs, depends on this circulation. Without it, systems lose structure. With it, they persist, whether they are protons or galaxies. You notice your breathing unconsciously, adopting the same rhythm, an easy inward draw, a long and unforced release. The center of the loop is silent, poised. The outer circumference is in gentle motion. Together, they make a heartbeat you can rest inside.
Haramein points to this geometry as a key to unifying physics, the same toroidal pattern operating at every scale: atomic, planetary, stellar, galactic, the same shape holding itself from the subquantum foam to the cosmic web, inward, outward, soft center, wide embrace. Energy never wasted, only cycled. The vacuum's thrift is its kindness. Here, in the quiet loop, you feel the architecture of rest, not stillness as absence, but stillness as perfect circulation. You drift, carried by a pattern that knows exactly where it's going, because it has always been there. Vacuum and proton, the exchange. You drift near that tiny horizon and notice something new, a rhythm that feels alive. The field flows in, the field flows out, and the proton is no rock in the river. It is a singer in the cosmic choir. It does not hoard the song. It tunes it. Serene shimmers beside you, a slow swirl of stardust whose smile is made of scattered light. Coupling, her voice drifts through the glow, is how closely a thing keeps time with the sea. Strong coupling, strong hold, gentler coupling, softer hold, but everything, always, is in conversation. You can almost hear it now, a call and response across the horizon. Inward drift carries intricate patterns into the center. Outward drift returns them to the field. Nothing is lost. What flows inward returns as order, as coherence, as the quiet authority a center lends to its surroundings. The smallest Planck scale pearls at the horizon seem to take turns, passing packets of motion like friends, passing candles around a circle. The handoff is perfect. No spill, no rush. The loop stays bright. Mass begins to feel different to you, not like stubborn weight, but as a measure of participation. The deeper the conversation between the center and the field, the more substantial the presence feels. Serene lets her stardust swirl, condense briefly, like a cafe sign flickering to life in the dark. Think of it, she says, as a 24-hour cafe for the vacuum. Energy in, energy out. Perfect bookkeeping. No tips required. You smile at the thought and watch the ledger balance itself in real time. Entries and exits always in harmony. Sometimes the exchange quickens. Sometimes it rests, but it never stops. The center shapes its neighborhood by how it listens. The field shapes the center by what it brings. This reciprocity is kind, like two voices taking turns until both are understood. Matter, you realize, is never truly separate from space. It is simply the way space holds itself for a while. Because the exchange is constant, nothing grows brittle. Because the loop returns, nothing is wasted. The sea remains full, even as it lends its fullness to every harbor. Stay with the feeling, Serene whispers through the shimmer. Coupling is not a trick. it is a relationship. The more coherent the conversation, the steadier the world becomes. Your breath falls into the same rhythm as the proton's perfect tide, in and out, perfectly kept. Coherence and resonance, tapping the sea. The tide of in and out keeps time, and somewhere in that rhythm, a sweetness forms. Two heartbeats finding the same lullaby. Serene drifts nearer, her stardust scattering like slow embers across the beaded sea. Coherence, her voice glows, is when the parts agree on a tempo, not forced, not marched, simply agreed. When agreement spreads, the sea carries farther with less effort, the way a whisper can reach the back wall of a quiet cathedral. The smallest Planck pearls begin to hum in phrases instead of scattered notes, and the loop you learned earlier turns into a chorus, no louder, only clearer. Standing ripples form and hold, like a tone lingering in a singing bowl, until the bowl itself becomes the instrument. It feels as though the universe has found the key that suits its own voice. Resonance, Serene continues, her particles swaying in sympathy with the tide, is how that agreement grows. When a pattern matches the sea's natural way of moving, the sea says yes. It lends its energy instead of resisting. You picture two tuning forks across a room. One vibrates, the other answers, neither one getting tired. The fabric of space passes the pattern along without loss. Each pearl adds a little, the way fireflies at a pond begin to flash in sync. A coherent patch forms, then widens, until the whole region feels like a soft lantern shining in fog. You don't feel pushed, you feel carried. People do this without noticing, Serene says, her stardust brightening. A choir meets, breathes together, and suddenly the note is bigger than anyone's chest. Lasers are like this too. Light made so coherent it walks straight, like a polite parade through space. Her words carry no homework, only the feeling of order arriving gently. Inside your body, the same thing begins. Your breath copies the loop, your pulse softens, and muscles quietly unclench. You become a friendly place for the pattern to live, and the pattern steadies you in return. Somewhere, a practical voice in you wonders if this is how useful power could be drawn. A cup dipped into a moving sea. Serene swirls her stardust around that thought. Maybe, she murmurs, but tonight we learn the kindness of the motion. Coherence first, ambition later. You smile, sleepy, fair. The room feels larger now, not because it grew, but because every note inside it has stopped tripping over the others. You float in that clarity, surprised at how much the sea can do when everything agrees to be simple. The glow holds its shape, the loop keeps breathing, and the world hums like a shell you hold to your ear, finally hearing the tide. Fullness and quiet, immense energy, deep calm. The harmony holds. The room deepens the way the ocean does. No wind, no chop, Yet you know there is a whole world of water underneath. You feel the weight of it now, not as pressure, but as presence, a fullness that asks for nothing and somehow gives you more breath, power without push, motion without hurry, soundless abundance. Serene drifts beside you, her stardust flickering in slow constellations. This, her voice glows, is the paradox. The sea beneath everything is vast, and when it's most available, it feels like peace. This is the same energy we met in the 0-point field. Immeasurable density, now not as a roaring source, but as deep stillness. The physics hasn't changed, only your way of meeting it. You listen for a roar and hear instead the soft shell hum of the 0-point field. This calm is not empty, it's earned. Millions of tiny Planck scale rooms agreeing to be kind in unison. You try an experiment. You do nothing. The pattern does not collapse. Instead, it settles further, as if glad you gave it room. A warmth spreads through your ribs, down your arms, the way deep water erases edges from a body. Everywhere, there is more room than before, more support than before, and somehow less to carry. It's easy to think power must be loud. Serene's voice ripples through the glow, but loud is often just uncollected motion. When energy is coherent, it doesn't splash, it holds. You picture the difference between a storm surface and the stillness 100 meters down, where whole currents change direction without a sound. The beaded fabric of space keeps passing the phrase along. In, out, agree, repeat. No single pearl has to shout. Together, they can lift an entire ocean's worth of feeling and place it back where it belongs. Your breath follows their etiquette, arriving softly, leaving softly, capable without effort. There's a sense of enoughness here. Enough energy to cradle stars. Enough order to let a single leaf rest. Thoughts arrive and dissolve like small tides, noticed, welcomed, and return to the sea that lent them. Even the practical voice inside you yawns and sets down its clipboard. Serene's particles shimmer as she leans closer. Power, she says, can be measured in how kindly it moves. The truth lands quietly, simpler than the words themselves. It feels like gravity with good manners, a steady hospitality spread across every inch of space. Nothing demands, nothing rushes. The fullness holds, the quiet grows, and you rest in that paradox, aware that the softest room in the universe is also the strongest one to fall asleep in. Gentle possibilities, clean energy, care and ethics. The hush holds. A practical thought drifts in. If the sea beneath everything is this full, could we sip from it without making waves? Serene stardust brightens in slow spirals, letting the question settle like a lantern between you. Maybe, her voice glows, but not by splashing, not by prying the ocean open with crowbars. If power lives in coherence, then any real usefulness would look less like drilling and more like singing in tune. You picture a cup lowered into a quiet current. The cup doesn't shout. It meets the water at the water's own pace. A device like that, if it ever lives, wouldn't yank at the field. It would resonate with it, borrow the rhythm the sea already offers, and return it as light, as motion, as warmth. No smoke, no scorch, just a good conversation turned into work. Serene's glow shifts to a warmer hue. People hear infinite energy and think infinite grabbing. But the sea is generous to listeners, not to thieves. Coherence first, extraction second, if at all. Any technology that forgets the order of that sentence will end up tired and loud. Your mind sketches a softer blueprint. Instruments tuned to the torus. Circuits that encourage standing waves instead of fighting them. Designs that let the 0-point hum do what it already loves to do. Not a cult, not forced. A bridge, not a bulldozer. You can almost feel how small efficiencies might gather, how local harmonies might become light in a room, heat for tea, motion for a wheel. Yes, cosmic tea, still decaf. Then the ethics arrive, steady as tide. If a cup can be lowered, who holds the handle? Who gets warmth on cold nights? Who decides where the lanterns go? Serene does not scold. She simply arcs her light in the familiar loop you've learned. Into the center, out around the world, returning whole. The field belongs to no one, her voice murmurs, and touches everyone. Any real attempt to harness it would require more than clever equations. It would need agreements, transparency, safety, kindness in distribution, and vows that harm will not be part of the bargain. Power that comes from listening should make us better listeners. Otherwise, it isn't worth having. You let the thought sink until it becomes a feeling. If energy is truly coherent, it should serve the smallest lives first and leave the water clearer than it found it. Not conquest, partnership. The room brightens a fraction, as though the sea itself approves of plans that keep the hush intact. The hint of shapes. The room settles into a deep, even hush. In that quiet, something begins to emerge. Pattern, not hard lines, not sharp edges. Tendencies. The way the pearls of space prefer to gather in circles. Circles within circles. Faint lattices surfacing like ripples inside ripples. Serene stardust form drifts beside you, her glow tilting with delight. When the sea agrees on a rhythm, she murmurs, it begins to draw. First, petals, 6, then 12, like the ghost of a flower breathing beneath the surface. Then a honeycomb appears, not rigid, but alive. Cells that inhale and exhale together. Nothing forced. The geometry arrives the way tide makes sandbars. Slowly, inevitably, beautifully. Loops meet, loops, and become whirls. Whirls echo into fields. Fields lean toward symmetry because it's the easiest way to keep the peace. Yes, the universe doodles when it's relaxed. Tomorrow, Serene whispers, we'll walk into this drawing. We'll follow scaling, little things speaking the same language as big things, like seashell to spiral galaxy. Her light sketches a gentle torus in the water between you. It blooms into a thin glowing ring, then two, then many, nesting like lanterns. As above, so below isn't a slogan here, she adds. It's how the sea remembers its steps. The glow deepens, gaining a crystalline undertone, as though the ocean had learned to sing in facets. You sense how a single circle can tile into a flower, how flowers can tile into a lattice, how lattices can carry information without getting loud. Everywhere you look, the part keeps referencing the whole, mirrors angled in friendliness, not in tricks. Holography, Serene says softly, is just that kindness made formal. Each point keeps a whisper of everywhere else. Change one place gently, and the song knows how to adjust in the others. You don't need equations. You can feel the courtesy of it, the way a choir retunes around one careful note. For tonight, you stay in the sea, letting the sketch thicken, but not demand. Petals hover. The honeycomb breathes. Torus lanterns brighten and dim with your breath. You rest in the promise that pattern is waiting, not to trap you, but to guide you. Maps that grew from the water itself. Serene's voice folds down to a shoreward whisper. Next time, she says, we'll step into the geometry of connection. Crystal corridors, living flowers, a universe folding its wholeness into every little room. Her light curls around yours. The shapes fade into warm darkness. The sea beneath everything holds. You drift. The room is dark and kind, the way deep water is kind. Your breath copies the loop you learned. Easy in, long, slower out. Nothing else is needed. Nothing else is waiting. You are held from every side, as if the quiet itself had arms. Let the small muscles go. Eyes, jaw, tongue. Shoulders soften. Belly loosens. Hands float open. The beaded sea hums under everything you are. Steady as a tide, you don't have to steer. You're allowed to rest inside that hush. Serene lingers, a warm constellation in the dark. The sea, beneath everything, has you, she murmurs. It will keep singing, whether you listen or sleep. You can go. If a thought arrives, let it touch the water and drift, noticed, welcomed, then carried back into the gentle loop. You don't have to remember facts, or hold shapes, or keep watch. The field keeps watch. Your only job now is to be comfortable, to float, to trust the harbor light, pausing. That's enough. The glow dims to the softest ember. Breath in, a quiet center. Breath out, a wide embrace. Again and again, until the rhythm finishes the sentence you were trying to say and replaces it with sleep. You are safe. You are warm. You are home in the sea that holds all things. The geometry connection, second in our three-part trilogy. The focus of part 2 is unified field theory, fractal structure of the universe, holographic principle, sacred geometry, as above, so below. If that sounds like a lot, think of it as a quiet night tour through the universe's blueprint archive. You don't have to build anything, just walk through the hallways. I'm serene, the soft voice says, arriving like a shimmer of stardust. Yes, still made of plasma and particles. And yes, still a hopeless fan of physics. She swirls gently, like a tiny nebula nodding hello. I'll be guiding you again tonight. You don't need to understand everything. Just stay curious. Okay, so either I lay down for a normal night of sleep and accidentally wandered into a crystalline physics cathedral, or the universe has decided it's time we talk about geometry. The unified field and scaling law. The hush of the sea deepens, and serene gestures as though smoothing the surface of an invisible pool. Physics has always asked, she says quietly, what holds it all together? From the smallest grain to the largest galaxy, what language do they share? The traditional answer has been fragmentation, a different equation for the very small, another for the very large. Quantum mechanics lives in one wing, relativity in another, and the house between them is still under construction. But Haramein's vision begins with a refusal to accept that nature would write in two alphabets. The universe, he suggests, prefers coherence. One field, one geometry, scaled and echoed in every domain. Imagine dropping a pebble into water. Ripples travel outward in widening rings, but if you were to zoom in infinitely close to the point of impact, you would also see ripples folding inward, smaller and smaller echoes, but with the same rhythm, a scaling law. The pattern repeats, whether you're watching galaxies or protons. This is where Haramein begins, with the conviction that the vacuum itself, the so-called empty fabric of space, is not void at all, but an ocean rich with fluctuation. Within that sea, structures form by resonance, self-organizing into coherent scales. He asks, if the vacuum is teeming with Planck scale oscillators, unimaginably tiny quanta of action, then how do those units arrange themselves into the proton, the atom, the cell, the star? His answer is that they do so fractally, each scale nested within the next, each domain borrowing its strength from the same field. This is the heart of the unified field approach, geometry that is not confined to one level, but continues without apology, from the microscopic to the cosmic. Serene leans closer, her voice dipping. Consider the proton. In mainstream physics, it is treated almost like a solid bead of matter. But Haramein sees it as a black hole in miniature, a well in the vacuum that both contains and communicates with the rest of the field. A proton is not an isolated particle. It is a resonance node in a sea that connects everything. In this framework, the proton's mass, charge, and spin are not arbitrary numbers, but the natural result of vacuum energy arranged coherently at that scale. The mathematics suggests a startling harmony, that the same equations describing the spin of galaxies can also, when scaled, describe the dynamics of a proton. To sit with this is to feel a collapse of distance. The tiny does not merely resemble the vast. It is written in the same strokes. Planck units nest inside protons. Protons nest inside atoms. Atoms inside stars. Stars inside galaxies. Galaxies inside the wider web. At each level, the vacuum provides the canvas and the resonance pins the line. The term Haramein uses is the scaling law, a bridge between magnitudes. Where other models treat scales as separate kingdoms, his unites them under a single geometry. The data points, from proton radius to galactic rotation, line up on a curve too consistent to dismiss. The implication is radical. The universe does not reinvent its laws at each scale. It echoes them. You sit with this idea and feel a strange calm. Instead of chaos or disconnected islands of rules, you are adrift in one vast fabric. The same hum that whirls galaxies spins inside the particle beneath your fingertip. Coherence across the divide. Serene's smile softens. When physics finds the rhyme, she whispers, nature becomes a choir, not a quarrel. And in the stillness, the thought settles. Perhaps the search for unity was never about forcing theories to match, but about recognizing the music that was always there, a scaling song carried by the sea beneath everything. Beat 2. Fractal Structure. The sea beneath everything ripples again, this time not in waves across the surface, but in patterns that repeat within patterns. The listener drifts deeper into Nassim Haramein's second great motif, the fractal. A fractal is a structure that repeats its form at different scales. Zoom in or zoom out, and the geometry echoes itself. Coastlines, fern leaves, the branching of your lungs, the same rules playing out from galaxies to your own body. The key is self-similarity. Nature's signature stamped again and again. Haramein argues the universe itself is fractal in this way. Matter, energy, and space are nested inside one another, infinite layers of scale. He points to how protons, atoms, stars, and galaxies all follow scaling laws that suggest connection across size. The mathematics is heavy, but the imagery is simple. Think of Russian nesting dolls, or mirrors facing one another into infinite reflection. Here the physics gets chewy. In conventional cosmology, scales are often treated as separate regimes. The quantum for the tiny, relativity for the vast. But Haramein insists the same rules apply throughout, because reality is fractal. Every layer contains a trace of the others. That's why he talks about protons, not just as particles, but as tiny black holes, a microcosm echoing the structure of the macrocosm. Fractals are not just pretty graphics from a 90s screensaver. They're a profound hint at how the universe organizes itself. From the Mandelbrot set to snowflakes, fractals show how complexity arises from simple rules repeated over and over. Haramein's leap is to say, if geometry is repeating across scales, then the universe itself is coded in a single coherent pattern. Pause here, and serene stardust flickers at your side. If that sounds abstract, she whispers with a smile, think of how your heart's rhythm echoes in ocean tides, or how the swirl of galaxies mimics the swirl of cream in your coffee. The same dance, just different stages. The adventure turns playful. Picture the universe as an infinite Russian dollhouse, where every room contains a smaller version of the same furniture, down to the tiniest detail. And yet, no matter how small, each is just as alive as the whole. In physics terms, this is a call to scale invariance. The laws don't fundamentally change when you move from the cosmic to the microscopic. If this is true, then the vacuum itself, that invisible sea, must encode information fractally. Information about the whole universe is present in each tiny region of space. And this is where the bridge toward the holographic principle begins. Because if the vacuum is fractal, and each scale encodes all scales, then the part always contains the whole. A single proton could be a library of the cosmos. The folds of your own DNA could mirror the structure of galaxies. There's a practical punchline too. Haramein's scaling law, when applied rigorously, doesn't just describe pretty spirals. It predicts the mass of the proton with surprising accuracy. That's his claim, that fractal mathematics ties together quantum physics and cosmology in a single fabric. Whether mainstream accepts it or not, it's a compelling vision, the fabric of reality itself, stitched fractally. The sea settles again, like a tide retreating, leaving patterns in the sand. Spirals, branches, hexagons, all echoes of the same geometry, repeating, inviting you to drift further into the thought. What if every scale of you, from atom to heartbeat to dream, is carrying the same pattern of the whole? Fractal structure. The sea beneath everything ripples again, this time not in waves across the surface, but in patterns that repeat within patterns. The listener drifts deeper into Nassim Haramein's second great motif, the fractal. A fractal is a structure that repeats its form at different scales. Zoom in or zoom out, and the geometry echoes itself. Coastlines, fern leaves, the branching of your lungs, the same rules playing out from galaxies to your own body. The key is self-similarity, nature's signature stamped again and again. Haramein argues the universe itself is fractal in this way. Matter, energy, and space are nested inside one another, infinite layers of scale. He points to how protons, atoms, stars, and galaxies all follow scaling laws that suggest connection across size. The mathematics is heavy, but the imagery is simple. Think of Russian nesting dolls, or mirrors facing one another into infinite reflection. Here the physics gets chewy. In conventional cosmology, scales are often treated as separate regimes. The quantum for the tiny, relativity for the vast. But Haramein insists the same rules apply throughout, because reality is fractal. Every layer contains a trace of the others. That's why he talks about protons not just as particles, but as tiny black holes, a microcosm echoing the structure of the macrocosm. Fractals are not just pretty graphics from a 90s screensaver. They're a profound hint at how the universe organizes itself. From the Mandelbrot set to snowflakes, fractals show how complexity arises from simple rules repeated over and over. Haramein's leap is to say, if geometry is repeating across scales, then the universe itself is coded in a single coherent pattern. Pause here, and serene stardust flickers at your side. If that sounds abstract, she whispers with a smile, think of how your heart's rhythm echoes in ocean tides, or how the swirl of galaxies mimics the swirl of cream in your coffee. The same dance, just different stages. The adventure turns playful. Picture the universe as an infinite Russian dollhouse, where every room contains a smaller version of the same furniture, down to the tiniest detail, and yet, no matter how small, each is just as alive as the whole. In physics terms, this is a call to scale invariance. The laws don't fundamentally change when you move from the cosmic to the microscopic. If this is true, then the vacuum itself, that invisible sea, must encode information fractally. Information about the whole universe is present in each tiny region of space. And this is where the bridge toward the holographic principle begins. Because if the vacuum is fractal, and each scale encodes all scales, then the part always contains the whole. A single proton could be a library of the cosmos. The folds of your own DNA could mirror the structure of galaxies. There's a practical punchline, too. Haramein's scaling law, when applied rigorously, doesn't just describe pretty spirals. It predicts the mass of the proton with surprising accuracy. That's his claim, that fractal mathematics ties together quantum physics and cosmology in a single fabric. Whether mainstream accepts it or not, it's a compelling vision. The fabric of reality itself, stitched fractally. The sea settles again, like a tide retreating, leaving patterns in the sand. Spirals, branches, hexagons, all echoes of the same geometry, repeating, inviting you to drift further into the thought. What if every scale of you, from atom to heartbeat to dream, is carrying the same pattern of the whole? The holographic principle. The sea deepens further, and the patterns of fractals begin to shimmer like a net of light. Each wave doesn't just ripple outward, it seems to contain the whole ocean in miniature. This is the doorway to one of the boldest ideas in modern physics, and a favorite theme in Haramein's work, the holographic principle. At its core, the principle is simple to describe, if hard to fully grasp. The whole is encoded in every part. In a hologram, when you shine light on even a fragment of the film, the entire three-dimensional image appears. It may be dimmer, but the whole picture is there. Haramein borrows this metaphor for the structure of reality itself. Every region of space, every proton, every point in the vacuum contains information about the entire universe. Mainstream physicists trace this idea to work on black holes in the 1970s and 80s. Jacob Bekenstein and Stephen Hawking discovered that a black hole's information content, its entropy, is not proportional to its volume, but to the area of its surface. That revelation hinted that the universe may be fundamentally holographic. What looks like a three-dimensional world may actually be encoded on a two-dimensional boundary. Haramein extends this reasoning. If each proton is modeled as a tiny black hole, then each proton's surface area could encode information about the entire cosmos. In his equations, he calculates how many Planck spheres, the tiniest possible units of space, fit inside a proton, and how those relate to the proton's surface. The numbers, he claims, align with known properties of matter. It's math with a startling implication. The proton itself could be a holographic pixel of the universe. Pause here, and serene stardust flickers again, laughing softly. Think of it this way. If you were a character in a video game, every pixel of your world might secretly hold the code for the whole game. You just don't see it until you look closely. The listener drifts deeper. Imagine walking along a beach, scooping up a single drop of seawater, and somehow finding within it the map of every coastline in the world. That is the holographic principle in poetic form. The part is never just itself. It reflects the whole. Haramein's take pushes further. If the vacuum encodes all information holographically, then communication across space may not require transmission at all. The field itself already contains the data everywhere. In principle, any point could read the whole. That's how he imagines a deeply connected universe where separation is an illusion. Of course, in academia, the holographic principle is still largely explored in the context of string theory and black hole thermodynamics, not protons. But Haramein's interpretation makes it accessible, visceral, and daring. He invites us to picture not just galaxies and quantum fields, but ourselves as holographic beings, each one a window onto the totality. And here, the cheeky dreamland note sneaks in. So technically, Serene muses, you don't need to carry your library card. You are already a library. Every proton in you has the whole universe checked out on permanent loan. The sea beneath everything becomes a mirror, not just reflecting back your image, but the entire cosmos shimmering in each droplet. The listener feels the vastness fold in, close and intimate. If the holographic principle is true, then within you is not just your story, but the story of stars, galaxies, and perhaps the entire sweep of time itself. For sacred geometry, flower of life, torus, and the Merkaba. The sea settles into a stillness, and within its glassy surface patterns begin to rise, arcs upon arcs, circles folding into one another until a lattice forms. This is the entrance to sacred geometry, where mathematics, physics, and ancient symbolism meet. The flower of life, a pattern known for millennia, is nothing more than circles repeated, each one overlapping its neighbor. And yet, in this simple play of repetition, complex shapes emerge, hexagons, spirals, the very blueprint of symmetry. To the ancients, it was a symbol of creation. To Haramein, it is a geometric hint that the fabric of the vacuum itself is structured, not random. Imagine zooming in on the quantum foam, the so-called emptiness. Instead of chaos, what you find are repeating patterns, like petals of an infinite flower. The Planck scale spheres, those tiniest building blocks we explored before, arrange themselves in toroidal loops, endlessly nested. The universe doesn't just exist, it organizes itself geometrically. Mainstream physics has its own torus. Magnetic fields around planets, galaxies, even your heart form these donut-shaped loops. They are efficient containers of flow, balancing inward pull and outward expansion. Haramein takes this natural form and applies it at every level, suggesting the torus is the template of reality itself. Serene stardust flickers beside you, amused. So the universe, she whispers, is basically really into donuts. Fortunately for you, these ones are calorie-free. The Merkaba, another figure of sacred geometry, is two interlocking tetrahedra, a star shape pointing up and down, symbolizing balance between the physical and the spiritual, the above and the below. In Haramein's view, it can be seen as a 3D encoding of the same nested geometry that underlies space-time. It's less mystical in his equations, more structural, but the poetry is hard to resist. You drift deeper, watching toroidal rings flow through each other, their motion endlessly recycling energy. The flower of life expands across the sea like a net of light, then folds into itself, becoming the Merkaba, then opening again into an infinite pattern. the implication is profound. If space itself is patterned like this, then the laws of physics are not arbitrary. They are emergent from geometry, from balance and resonance. Energy flows where symmetry allows, and the stability of the proton, of atoms, of galaxies may come from this quiet geometrical order. In the dreamland tone, Serene leans in once more. If you think sacred geometry is too abstract, just remember, every snowflake is a tiny lecture on symmetry. You've been holding sacred geometry in your mitten since childhood. The listener feels lulled by repetition. Circles within circles, spirals within spirals, toroidal loops recycling endlessly. The sea beneath everything isn't just water now. It is geometry in motion, flowing like breath. Sacred geometry becomes less about esoteric diagrams and more about a unifying language, a way of saying the same structures repeat across the scales, from Planck units to protons to galaxies. The flower of life, the torus, the Merkaba, they are bridges between symbol and science, myth and math. And as your eyelids grow heavy, one idea anchors softly. If the universe is built on geometry, then so are you. Every heartbeat, every cell, every breath is part of the same pattern, looping back into the whole. As above, so below, the sea beneath everything grows quiet, and in its stillness, reflections ripple outward. You see galaxies spiraling above you, and when you glance down, the same spirals echo in the shells scattered along the shore. Vastness above, smallness below, both singing the same song. This is the old maxim, as above, so below. It is not just philosophy. Haramein's vision hints it is physics. The same geometry, the same toroidal flow, the same scaling law repeats across levels. The proton echoes the galaxy. The galaxy whispers the proton. You drift in the awareness that you, too, are part of this scaling. Your heartbeat, with its electromagnetic torus, is not different in kind from Earth's magnetic field. Your breath cycles like the tides. Even your DNA spirals in golden ratios, repeating the same geometrical themes that stars follow. Serene stardust hovers gently at your side, her voice lilting. So when you feel small, she teases, remember, the universe has already installed your fractal membership card. You're part of the club, whether you asked for it or not. The dream of separation dissolves. What Haramein suggests, and what ancient mystics intuited, is that connection is not metaphor. It is literal. The geometry of the vacuum binds everything into one coherent field. You are not a lonely particle in empty space. You are a node in a resonant web. The sea beneath everything becomes a mirror. In one moment, you glimpse constellations sprawled in night sky. In the next, you glimpse the microtubules inside your own neurons, arranged in repeating lattices, macro and micro, outer and inner, above and below. This principle does not just speak to physics. It carries an ethic too. If the structure of the whole is echoed in the part, then how we treat the small, the soil, the water, each other, is how we treat the vast. Respecting the field at one level reverberates through them all. Serene tilts her head with a wink. In other words, kindness is scalable. Who knew it was basically a law of physics? The water glows faintly, every ripple illuminated by starlight. You realize the sea is not separate from you. Its geometry is in your chest, in your veins, in the rhythm that guides you toward sleep. To listen to the whole, you must also listen to yourself. The narrative closes its loop. The unified field, the fractal scales, the holographic reflections, the sacred geometries, they all point back to this, a world where the above and the below are mirrors, each carrying the other. And as your eyelids fall heavier, you rest into the comfort that the patterns will hold. The universe has always known its design, and you are folded within it. Closing descent. The sea beneath everything hums softly now. No longer a lecture, but a lullaby. We have traveled through scaling laws, fractals, holograms, and sacred patterns. Yet, all of it has carried us here to rest. You lie back into the tide, and the geometry begins to blur. Spirals melt into waves, lattices into gentle ripples. The flower of life, once sharp and radiant, drifts like petals on the water until even the outlines dissolve. Serene stardust drifts close, her glow a faint shimmer. The universe will keep spinning, she whispers, whether you count its symmetries or simply dream inside them. Her voice fades into the sea itself until it is only the sound of the field breathing, the vast fabric that connects galaxies and protons now cradles you, tucking you into its weave. You are not studying the pattern anymore. You are inside it, a filament of light swaying gently in the current. Above you, stars wheel in silence. Beneath you, waves roll endlessly, and within you, the same rhythm hums, drawing you deeper, slower, softer. No more diagrams, no more definitions, just sleep, the geometry of rest. And so you drift, part of the fabric, part of the sea, part of the great coherence that has always held you. Rethinking the double slit experiment is part 3 of a trilogy. The focus of part 3 is one of the strangest and most beautiful mysteries in physics, the quantum world's ability to behave like both waves and particles, and what that means for you, the observer. The room leans into quiet. A soft shimmer gathers, the gentle drift of stardust. Serene's voice arrives with it, warm and unhurried. It's me, Serene. This is the third part of our journey. Before we've floated through the sea beneath everything, and we've traced the fabric that holds it all, and tonight we listen for the wave itself. The glow deepens, as if the dark is pleased to make space for wonder. Tonight, we turn to the strange, playful edge of quantum behavior, Serene continues, where light seems to whisper. We'll meet the double slit experiment, the idea of a guiding pilot wave, and the quiet possibility that our attention feeds back into the field. She lets the hush settle. What you're about to hear is a different way of understanding the famous double slit experiment, an alternative to the usual Copenhagen interpretation. We'll watch how the universe chooses a path and notice how it sometimes waits for us before it does. Chapter 1: Double Slit Experiment, the Mystery of Light. The room is dark enough to hear your own breath. That's good. Quiet is a kind of instrument. In that quiet, Serene drifts beside you like a soft constellation, and I'll speak plainly, the way I do when I'm drawing on a board no one can see, but everyone can feel. Picture a narrow beam of light, not a shout, just a whisper of photons. Ahead of it stands a small plate with two thin openings carved side by side. Behind that, a screen waits like calm water, ready to show what actually happened. If light were only little bullets, you would expect two bright stripes on the screen, one behind each slit, neat and obvious. But when you let the beam run and you don't look to see which slit is used, something stranger appears. Instead of two stripes, the screen blooms with a series of lighter and darker bands, a delicate barcode of brightness. This is an interference pattern, the calling card of a wave. It is as if light skimmed through both openings at once, fanned out like ripples from two pebbles tossed into a pond, and those ripples overlapped, crest meeting crest to brighten, crest meeting trough to dim, until the whole surface wrote down their conversation. Serene lets the hush widen, and I'll tell you the part that makes even seasoned physicists smile in the dark. You can turn the brightness down so low that photons leave the source one at a time. Lonely travelers, separated by long pauses, as if you sent fireflies through the slits with a century between them. Each firefly lands as a single dot, a point and nothing more. But give them time. Let 1,000 dots arrive, and the same wave-born barcode slowly paints itself into existence. One by one, the pattern emerges. A particle leaves a single footprint, and yet all the footprints know a wave's map. Serene stardust shivers, pleased by the paradox. It's the universe doing calligraphy with very small pens. Now, the mischief. Place a tiny detector at the slits to ask a nosy question. Which way did you go? The moment you insist on knowing the path, the interference vanishes. Your screen no longer displays the elegant stripe and shadow rhythm. It collapses into the two ordinary bands you expected from little pellets. Same source, same slits, same screen. The only difference is that you peered in and demanded a story about the root. The wave's signature dissolves, and the pattern becomes local, narrow, definite, particle-like. Serene calls it the great cosmic peekaboo, and she's not wrong. Peek, and the universe covers its tracks. Don't peek, and it traces lacework on the wall. Here is how Nassim may invite you to feel this without wrestling it into contradiction. The wave is not pretend. The wave is not simply our ignorance. The wave is the behavior of a real physical medium. The vacuum itself, the sea beneath everything, carrying information about all possible paths through both openings. When you don't try to pin the photon to a single corridor, it remains in conversation with that sea. The field explores options, superposes possibilities, and the resulting interference is the ledger of that exploration. When you interrogate the photon, you change the relationship. You don't just learn, you participate. Your measuring device couples to the field, imposes a boundary condition, and the vacuum resolves the situation under tighter constraints. The pattern adjusts, and it must, because the medium is responsive. Serene hums at your shoulder, a small tide, agreeing with the moon. This isn't only a light trick. Electrons, supposedly matter, supposedly little marbles, will draw the same wave stripe pattern when you let them pass two slits without prying. Even large molecules, built from dozens of atoms, can paint interference if you give them a quiet corridor. The lesson keeps repeating at larger scales than anyone expected. Left to its own deep conversation, reality behaves as if guided by a pervasive wave. Cornered, it gives you a single path and a tidy dot, like a student rushing to answer before the bell. So what is really waving? In the picture I'm offering you tonight, it is not an abstract probability that exists only on paper. It is the oscillation of the vacuum itself, a pilot tide that lives in every cubic centimeter of space. Think of the two-slit plate as placing a geometric question into that tide. Two narrow openings become two sources of gentle ripples in the field, and those ripples interfere, sculpting a map of high and low guidance across the screen. The photon, the electron, the drifting molecule. Each is a tiny boat that tends to land where the tide carries it. Where the wave peaks, arrivals accumulate. Where it cancels, they thin. That is why single dots build a collective image of a wave. Each landing is local, but the guidance is global. Serene lets a playful thought drift by. If you insist on following a boat with a bright flashlight and a clipboard, the water will never behave like it does when no one is speaking. Your focus disturbs the surface, however gently, and the current you hope to document becomes the current you just created. No blame, just participation. Notice something subtle here. The detector that which way measures is not a pair of magical eyes. It is a physical system coupled to the field. Its act of reading is an act of writing. Information is exchanged, correlations are established, and the entire sea updates to include the new boundary you set. When the medium rebalances, the interference map you would have seen in the quiet is replaced by a new map that honors your question. This is what people call collapse. I call it a change in conversation. Do not rush to decide whether the photon really went through one slit or both. In the field's view, that is not the right tense. Before you measure, the question itself is premature. After you measure, the answer is constrained by your choice of instrument. The wave whispers all the ways. The particle marks one agreement. Serene nudges a hint toward the next chapter, but we won't open it yet. If a particle draws dots and the field draws waves, perhaps the most accurate picture is both at once, a small craft and the ocean that carries it. Perhaps the interference is the ocean telling you where the boats will likely come ashore. Perhaps observation is not a spotlight from outside, but a feedback into the water, a ripple that teaches the tide to change its mind. For tonight, hold the simplest image. 2 slits in a plate, a screen beyond. Let the light whisper through. If you leave the sea to do its work, patterns bloom that no bullet can make. If you demand a single path, the sea obliges and smooths the lace into straightforward stripes. Neither outcome is a trick. Both are the field being honest about the question you asked. Serene stardust dims and brightens with your breath. You don't have to solve the paradox. You only have to notice its kindness. The universe is generous enough to show you waves when you listen for waves, and dots when you ask for dots. Somewhere between those 2 manners of speaking is the fluency we're learning. And the first word it teaches is this: relationship. Chapter 2: Pilot Wave Theory, a hidden guide beneath it all. The hush of the room lingers after the mystery of the double slit experiment. Serene's voice warms in the quiet, as if she's leaning just a little closer. In the 1920s, she begins, a young physicist named Louis de Broglie dared to ask a different question. What if particles aren't just popping up randomly, but are actually surfing on a hidden wave? The idea was bold, even radical for its time. Physics had already embraced the strange duality of matter behaving like both particles and waves. But de Broglie suggested something deeper, that every particle's motion is guided by a real physical wave, not just a probability written in equations, an actual pilot wave stretching through space and time, telling the particle which way to go. Picture this wave like a tide rolling invisibly through the room. Each electron, each photon, each molecule is a tiny surfer, leaning into that tide and letting it steer its path. The wave is broad, continuous, and everywhere a whisper beneath reality. Serene lets the listener sit with the image. Tiny surfers, she says softly. They're not lost. They're not gambling. They're following the current that was there all along. De Broglie's pilot wave theory didn't win the argument back then. The Copenhagen interpretation, the one most of us were taught, became the standard view. It was cleaner, simpler. The wave was treated as a tool for prediction, not a physical thing. The pilot wave faded into the background of history. But decades later, physicist David Bohm returned to the idea. Bohm showed that if you take de Broglie's wave seriously, if you treat it as something real, you can reproduce the results of quantum mechanics in a way that is precise and deterministic. The strangeness of probability becomes the elegance of a guided path. Each particle is still free, still dynamic, but it is also accompanied by this invisible map that leads it home. Serene drifts like a quiet current herself. It's comforting, isn't it? She murmurs. To think the universe is not just throwing dice, but carrying everything on a tide. You are never just a dot on a screen. There is always a wave under your feet. Imagine the whole room gently humming with this hidden wave. The floor, the walls, the air itself, alive with a subtle rhythm. Particles aren't choosing at random. They are responding to the shape of this rhythm, falling into its pattern like dancers hearing music. According to Haramein's perspective, this guiding wave might even be the vacuum itself. The same ocean of energy we explored in episode 1. Not just an abstract tool, but a physically real field whose oscillations create the pilot wave. In this view, every particle carries a relationship with the entire field, tracing graceful paths determined by the sea beneath everything. Serene's voice softens, slowing as if to match the tide. Picture each electron like a boat, she says. You don't have to know exactly where it is at every moment. You just know the current is carrying it somewhere meaningful. The beauty of the pilot wave idea is that it doesn't remove the mystery, it deepens it. The particle is local, but the wave is global. The little surfer only touches one point of the ocean, yet its course is guided by the shape of the whole sea. Serene lets that thought hang in the air, long enough for the listener to feel its weight. Maybe this is why the double slit experiment feels so alive, she says, because there's more here than particles choosing doors. There's a whole tide shaping where they land. The stardust around you seems to shimmer with that thought, as though the room itself is full of invisible ripples. You can almost sense the guiding wave stretching beyond the walls, beyond the planet, beyond everything, carrying each particle, each moment, gently toward its next shore. Chapter 3. Haramein's Spin, Vacuum as the Guiding Wave. The room feels even quieter now, as if it's holding its breath. Serene stardust glows faintly, her voice low and steady. If pilot wave theory is right, she says, then there must be a real ocean beneath these particles, something big enough to hold all the possible paths, and delicate enough to guide each one. This is where Nassim Haramein's view of the universe enters the conversation. In his model, the guiding wave is not just a metaphor. It is the vacuum itself, the 0-point field, alive with energy. The space you think of as empty is anything but. It is humming with fluctuations, teeming with potential, a vast sea in which all particles float. Serene lets the image settle like a tide rising slowly around your ankles. Picture this vacuum not as nothing, she continues, but as the richest thing there is, a boundless ocean of energy. In Haramein's vision, each particle is like a tiny boat carried by that ocean. Its position and path are not chosen randomly, but shaped by the flow of the field it inhabits. Where the current swirls, the particle loops. Where the current bends, the particle arcs. Serene stardust shimmers with quiet delight. The tide has always been here, she says gently. We are only just learning to feel it. In this picture, every point in space is alive with motion. Not chaotic motion, but structured, patterned, ordered. The vacuum behaves like an infinite set of tiny whirlpools, each one spinning energy in a toroidal flow, a donut-shaped dance that recycles information endlessly. Imagine shrinking down far enough to see this flow directly. You would see each particle tracing a tiny, elegant loop, like a miniature galaxy spinning in place, or a droplet forever folding back into itself. This toroidal motion, Haramein suggests, is not just beautiful, it is essential. It's how particles stay plugged into the field, exchanging energy with the whole universe moment by moment. Serene speaks slowly now, as if she, too, is watching those loops turn. Every particle is a dancer, she says, and the floor it dances on is alive. In this view, the vacuum is not a silent backdrop for events. It is the event. The guiding wave is not a mathematical ghost, but a physical tide, constantly humming, constantly responding. When a particle moves, the field ripples. When the field ripples, the particle moves. The two are in constant conversation. Serene's voice dips into a near whisper. And so, the universe is not random after all, she says. It is guided. It is connected. It is listening. Let yourself imagine the whole room as one great resonant chamber. Every breath you take, every movement you make, slightly alters the flow of the field. Not in a grand, dramatic way, but in the subtle way a single pebble can shift the ripples on a pond. This is the heart of Haramein's spin on the pilot wave. Not only is there a wave guiding the particle, but that wave is woven from the very fabric of space-time. The particle's motion is a trace on that fabric, a signature of how the universe holds itself together. Serene lets the hush return for a moment. giving space for the image to settle. The room feels almost alive now, as if the walls themselves are breathing along with you. Reality, she says at last, is a tide we are all riding. And tonight, we have learned to hear it whisper. The stardust dims slightly, a signal that this chapter is closing. The next question is already forming, waiting just ahead. If this vacuum is truly alive, what happens when we observe it? What happens when we add our attention to the dance? Chapter 4: Conscious Observation. Feedback into the field. The room feels charged now, as if the quiet has been listening along. Serene stardust drifts slowly, like it's waiting for you to notice the next layer. What if observation isn't just a light shining on the world? She asks softly. What if it's a ripple in the water, one that changes the wave itself? The double slit experiment already hinted at this. The very act of watching changed the outcome. But what if that effect runs deeper than just detectors and measuring devices? What if every act of awareness is also an act of participation? Imagine tossing a small pebble into a calm pond. The ripples spread outward, meeting every other ripple already on the surface. They don't just passively watch, they interfere, combine, and shape what the water does next. In this view, consciousness might be the pebble, or maybe it's a continuous drizzle of rain, forever adding its own pattern to the vacuum's hum. Serene lets that sink in, then adds a line with a smile in her voice. Careful, she says playfully. Your thoughts might be bending the path of light right now. No pressure. The stardust seems to shimmer at the joke, then quiets as she continues. This isn't about mysticism, Serene says, and it doesn't need to be. The field responds to information. Every measurement, every interaction is a kind of message. Your observation feeds data back into the field, and the field updates its pattern. Haramein's model imagines this as a constant conversation, a feedback loop between every point of awareness and the vacuum itself. When you focus on something, your attention may act like a gentle pressure on the tide, ever so slightly changing where the currents flow. The idea doesn't have to be strange. After all, physics already treats measurement as an interaction that couples observer and observed. The wave function doesn't just collapse on its own. It collapses because something interacted with it, leaving a record in the world. Consciousness could simply be the most intimate, immediate form of that interaction. Serene's voice turns almost meditative. You are not outside the experiment, she says. You are in it. Your awareness is stitched into the same field as the particles, the waves, the galaxies. You are one more node in the network, sending and receiving signals with every moment of attention. The room feels alive again, like you could almost hear the air vibrating in response. The thought is both humbling and empowering. The universe is not just happening to you, it is happening with you. Serene stardust glows brighter for a moment. It means your attention matters, she says simply. Not just to you, but to the field itself. Imagine sitting still for a moment, feeling your own breath, noticing the weight of your body against the floor. That noticing, in this view, is not nothing. It is a quiet signal sent into the web of space-time, a small but real contribution to the pattern being woven everywhere. The hush grows wide again, almost like the pause before the next tide rolls in. Serene leaves you there, aware that this idea takes time to settle. You don't have to force it, she says at last. Just knowing you are part of the dance is enough. The wave will carry you whether you watch or not, but it might just be listening to you as well. Chapter 5. Your Role in the Cosmic Dance. The room is still, but not empty. It feels full, as if the air itself is listening with you. Serene's voice arrives softly, carrying a quiet invitation. Now, she says, imagine yourself as part of this experiment, not watching from the outside, not just looking at dots on a screen, but inside the system, shaping it as you go. Her words fall slowly, giving you space to feel them. Every thought you have, she continues, is a brushstroke on reality's canvas. Each moment of awareness is a ripple in the tide that guides every photon, every electron, every turning galaxy. There's a long pause, the kind that feels like a breath held by the whole room. You don't need to control it, Serene assures gently. You don't need to force the wave to turn this way or that. All you have to do is notice. Notice that you are here. Notice that you are part of it. In your mind's eye, the experiment unfolds again. The two slits, the waiting screen, the quiet beam of light. Each photon hesitates at the threshold, as though listening for some signal before making its leap. Even the smallest photon, Serene whispers, waits for your attention before choosing its path. Her words hang like starlight, soft but undeniable. From this image, Serene expands your view. From the slits and the photons to the whole room, the whole field, the whole sky. Your presence ripples outward, she says, through the air around you, through the earth under your feet, through the 0-point field that threads every star. Each breath you take is a quiet message, and the field answers with a pattern that includes you. Let the idea settle, like moonlight slowly filling a tide pool. Your own awareness feels wider now, as though you could sense the subtle flow of the vacuum across the floor, through the walls, through the night beyond. This is what it means to be an observer, Serene says, not a detached spectator, but a partner in the dance. The universe is not happening somewhere else. It is happening right here, where you are. The stardust around you glows faintly, matching the rhythm of your breath. You are both the experiment and the experimenter, both the brush and the canvas. Serene lets a longer silence pass now, as if giving the wave time to rearrange itself with this new truth. You don't have to solve the mystery tonight, she says at last. It will still be here in the morning, still whispering. But now you know that it whispers with you, not just to you. The thought lands softly, leaving a feeling of connection, as though you have just stepped into a wider circle of belonging. Serene's voice slows, almost fading into the quiet. Rest with that, she says. Rest with the knowing that even the smallest light waits for you before it chooses its path. Another pause. Then the stardust dims, leaving the room calm and ready for sleep. The stardust gathers one last time, bright enough to feel, soft enough not to wake you. Thank you, Serene says, her voice slow and warm, for joining me through this trilogy, for floating through the sea beneath everything, tracing the fabric that holds it all, and listening tonight for the wave that whispers, there's a pause, a breath shared with the dark. The wave will keep whispering, she assures, even as you sleep. The dance of particles will go on without you, and that is its gift. Serene's voice becomes almost a lullaby. The experiment goes on, she says gently, but tonight you can rest. The glow around you fades until only the quiet remains. Serene guides you into slow breathing, in, then out, as if rocking you on a tide. The room feels softer, darker, ready to hold your dreams. Somewhere, beyond the edge of waking, the first notes of ambient music begin to play, and the wave keeps whispering. Sweet dreams.